Alright guys, welcome to your 30-second lesson, and in this lesson I want to talk to you guys about something called views. Now views are kind of tricky, but once you get the hang of them, you're going to be able to do some amazing things with them, and they're going to save you a whole bunch of time. So definitely pay attention to this tutorial because it's going to be a good one. Now views, kind of think of them right now as temporary tables. Now remember this, views don't contain any real data. They're just holding data from other tables. So that's all a view is, a view into another table. So let me give you guys an example of when you would use a view. Say you had a website like eBay and you had all of these items, and on your home page you wanted to show the items that had the most bids, the hottest items. So what you would do is you would just go ahead and run a query, sort by bids, and show the top 10 most bidded items. So let's go ahead and run a query to do that. We'll go ahead and select ID, name, and the number of bids from items, and we'll just go ahead and in order to show the top 10 we'll just order by the number of bids, so we'll get highest to lowest, and in order to do that we need of course descending highest to lowest, and say we only want 10. We only want the 10 most bidded items. So let's go ahead and run this query and make sure it works. So clearly, as we can see, what this query returns is the top 10 most bidded items. But check this out. We not only want to put this on the home page, but maybe on every user's page we want to run this query on, so they can see the most top 10 bidded items, and then maybe we're going to make a little app so people can put it on their own page, and I don't know, we just want to run this query a bunch of times. So what we can do is every time we want to show the user the top 10 most bidded items for our website, we can go ahead and run this query again, or we could use a view. Now let me show you guys how to make a view out of this query. What you would do, and this is how I do it, this is probably the easiest way to make a view. Go ahead and run your query and make sure it works, and then once you have your query set up how you want it to, go ahead and just hit enter and bump it down a line. Now at the top line, go ahead and write create view, and then go ahead and name your view. And remember, a view is pretty much like a temporary table. So I'm just going to go ahead and name this view something like most bids, and then go ahead and write as. So we're pretty much saying go ahead and create a temporary table called a view, name it most bids, and as the data, just go ahead and use the data from this query right here. So now go ahead and hit go, and it says okay, we created it. Now as you can see, it creates a view on our left hand side, and if you can tell by the little icon, a view is different from a table because there is actually no data inside this view. The data that you're seeing is actually the data that exists inside items. Now this is good for a couple of reasons. First of all, whenever the items change up, maybe it's a week later and all the items are sold and we get new items with the highest bids, so do the items in the most bids view. This is pretty much a dynamic table. It updates automatically, and therefore it's better than creating a new table, because check it out. If we were to just create an entirely new table out of the top 10 items in items, then every time those items change, we would need to update the new table. But with a view gets updated automatically. Whenever you run this query, it's going to take the top 10 most bidded items at the time. So that's pretty much a cool thing. Whenever the items table changes, so does its view. So that's a cool thing. It saves you from having to rewrite their entire table every time you want to update your table. So pretty much just remember that a view is dynamic and it updates automatically anytime the information in the items table changes. So I know it's kind of hard to get used to, but well, that's it. Views are kind of complicated at first, but once you get the hang of them, you'll be good. Now another thing, and maybe this will give you guys a better idea of when you would use views. Say that, in our example, oh man, it must have been like 15 tutorials ago, I said that you can maybe make a new table or even a new column to have the properly formatted mailing address. Because, for example, whenever you want to mail something to someone in the United States, you write the name of their city and then their state separated by a column. But if we just use the data straight from here, there's no way that you can use a column. So what we can do is we could actually add a temporary column onto here, or we can go ahead and just add a view. So let me go ahead and turn this baby into a new view. So go ahead in SQL and let's run our query first. So what we want to do is we want to tie the city and state together, so it's city comma state in a proper mailing format. So what we do is select, and remember that concat function, it takes pretty much three things and ties it together, or any number of things actually. So city, and then after this I'm just going to add a comma with a space after it, and then add state. So for example, it would say Las Vegas, Nevada, or something like that. And I'm just going to go ahead and write as address from users. Now remember, whenever you use the as keyword, it pretty much gives it a nickname. So let's go ahead and see what this baby does. Now what it does is it makes an entirely new column called address by taking the old city, adding a comma after it and a space, and then writing the state. So say that we actually wanted to save this address not only as a temporary column, but we wanted to save it as a new view. So go ahead to where you wrote your query, and right above it, just go ahead and write create view. And now remember, a view is pretty much a temporary table. So give it a temporary table name. And since we're using this for a mailing address, I'll just go ahead and write mailing as, and under your as, just go ahead and write that query that we had before. So what this is going to do is it's going to create a temporary table or a view called mailing, and the information that's going to be inside that table is whatever we selected in this query right here. So go ahead and hit go and check it out. On the left hand side, if we click to browse our table or view, we can see that we now have our properly formatted address. Now you guys are probably saying, okay, so why wouldn't you just make a temporary column? Well, whenever you have a view, you can treat it just like you would a table. For example, you know how we could, of course, run select queries on items and users? We can also run basic select queries on these new views. For example, if we go ahead and select, if I can type, select name and bids from most bids, what this is going to do is it's going to select the name and the number of bids from our most bids view. Now remember, our most bids view is the one we made in our first example, which took the top 10 most bidded items and put them into an entirely new table. So let's go ahead and run this query and see what we got. The top 10 most bidded items. How awesome is that? So basically the thing that you have to remember is views do not store any data themselves. That is one benefit they have over making a duplicate table, for example, that would store the top 10 items, because they don't store any additional data. They just show you data from other tables, and that's why they don't take up any extra memory. It's basically a shortcut for having to retype a query each and every time you want the top 10 items or anything else, for example. And I know I showed you guys some examples in this tutorial that were probably pretty useless, but trust me, views can come in handy, especially when you have queries that you run quite often, duplicate queries, or you'll figure it out whenever you're programming. But for this tutorial, that's all I have for you. I bet you guys are probably sick about hearing of views. So anyways, thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next lesson.